When determining the ideal number of reps per set, the load you lift is going to play an important role. Heavier weights naturally limit your reps, while lighter ones allow you to do a lot more. But here's the real question: how heavy should you really go? And in this video, we're going to answer those questions for you. In fact, a recent meta analysis delved into this category, categorizing different loads based on their impact on muscle growth and strength. The study broke them down into three categories: light loads, moderate loads, and heavy loads. In fact, the findings just might surprise you. Interestingly, all these load categories were found to be effective for muscle building with no significant advantage to any particular one. When it came to strength gains, though, heavier loads were clearly superior. Training heavy loads resulted in a greater strength gains compared to moderate and light loads. This means that while you can achieve muscle growth with a variety of different loads, heavier loads are going to be better for you when it comes to increasing your 1 rep max strength. Now that we determined that muscle growth can be achieved through a large spectrum of weight, is there a point where the load is too light to be effective? A study explored this by comparing the effects of training with different loads on muscle growth and strength. So this study took 30 untrained men and performed single arm bicep curls and single leg press to failure twice a week for 12 weeks. One arm and leg trained 3 sets to failure with 20% of their 1 rep max, while the other limbs trained 3 sets to failure with either 40, 60, or 80% of their 1 rep max. The study found that limbs training with only 40, 60, or 80% 1 rep max loads experienced similar muscle growth, while limbs training with 20% of their 1 rep max achieved less muscle growth. Heavier loads also resulted in greater strength gains in the bicep curl and the leg press. This suggests that training with less than 40% of your 1 rep max might not be as effective for muscle growth. As we move on, if you believe this information will help you get better results, please support the channel by subscribing and letting me know in the comments. At the other end of the spectrum, is there a point where lifting too heavy can compromise muscle growth? Another study examined this by comparing moderate versus heavy load training on muscle growth and strength in 19 men with about 4 to 5 years of lifting experience. They performed 3 sets of various exercises 3 times a week per week for 8 weeks. One group lifted heavy weights in the 2 to 4 rep range, while the other used moderate loads in the 8 to 12 rep range. Both groups took all sets to failure. The study found that moderate loads led to slightly better muscle growth in the biceps, triceps, and quadriceps, but heavy load training resulted in superior increases in the 1 rep max strength for the bench press and the squat. So lifting heavy weights around 5 to 6 reps, roughly around 87% of your 1 rep max, may slightly be less effective for building muscle, but is definitely going to be more effective for increasing strength. The load we use has the greatest effect on how we perform each set, assuming we're going close to failure. So how close to failure should we take each set? When it comes to how close to failure you should train, another study analyzed the relationship between the proximity to failure and muscle growth. It found that training closer to failure leads to greater muscle growth, though proximity to failure had little impact on strength gains. Essentially, you want to take each set closer to failure, around 3 reps in reserve, to maximize muscle growth. This means that the load we use will be the main variable on how many reps we perform. However, for strength gains, the proximity to failure doesn't seem to matter as much if the load is sufficient. Fatigue also plays a role in how many reps you can perform across multiple sets. If you train to failure or close to it, the number of reps you can perform will likely decrease from set to set due to acute fatigue. For example, if you do 3 sets of dumbbell bicep curls with 20 pounds, taking each set to 1 rep before failure, you might get 12 reps on the first set, 11 on the second due to acute fatigue setting in, and 9 on the last set, even with adequate rest between sets. This decrease in reps is expected, especially when training with higher reps and shorter rest periods. The good news is you don't have to perform the same number of reps each set. Decreases in performance is going to be expected, so if the goal is to meet the targeted rep range, you can reduce the load slightly to increase the rep targets. Exercise selection significantly influences the number of reps you perform. Compound exercises like the squats, deadlifts, and pull-up variations are generally better suited for lower rep ranges than heavier loads. This is because they engage more muscles and require stabilization of other joints, making them more taxing on the cardiorespiratory system. As a result, these exercises are far more effective when performed with fewer reps and heavier weights, ensuring a more effective training session. Now, what about isolation exercises which target specific muscles? Broader rep ranges can definitely be effective. However, using heavier loads with these lifts can sometimes lead to joint irritation. To mitigate this, higher reps with lighter loads may be more appropriate as they reduce stress in the joints while still providing a sufficient stimulus for muscle growth. Therefore, adjusting the rep ranges based on the type of exercise and individual response is crucial for optimizing performance and minimizing injury risk. You might also change the rep ranges for different exercises depending on the specific purpose within your training program. For exercises where the goal is to maximize strength, It's generally advisable to use heavier loads and lower rep ranges, typically around 5 reps or fewer. But on the other hand, for exercises aimed at hypertrophy, either to support strength lifts or simply build bigger muscles, training within the hypertrophy rep range of about 5 to 30 reps would be more appropriate. Would you be able to guess which strength sport had the lowest injury rate? Let's take joint stress as a consideration. Heavier loads tend to increase joint stress and risk of injury, while lighter loads are more joint friendly. This was observed in a review of injury rates across various strength sports where bodybuilding, which involved less heavy lifting, had the lowest injury rates. If you're experiencing joint or connective tissue pain, switching to high reps with lighter loads might help while still allowing you to obtain a hypertrophy stimulus. If you're looking for another way to grow muscle, increasing reps can also be a way to implement progressive overload, which is essential for making training more challenging over time. By doing that, you increase the chances to continue to grow muscle. You can either increase the load or the number of reps to continue progressing. Going back to our bicep example, if you start with 20 pounds for 12 reps for 3 sets, but you're only able to get 11 reps on set 2 and 9 on set 3, over time, you might be able to increase it to 15 reps on set 1, 13 reps on set 2, and 12 on set 3. That would be a positive sign that you've progressed, and then you can go back and increase the weight and start the cycle again with fewer reps. What about non-traditional reps or sets? It's worth noting that metabolite techniques such as drop sets and myo reps might change the specific number of reps you perform in a set. These techniques often involve shorter rest periods and lighter loads, aiming to accumulate a high number of reps while the muscle is in a fatigue state. While these methods are effective for muscle growth, the rep range might differ compared to traditional straight sets. For example, one study compared the effects of 2 different metabolite techniques with traditional training on muscle growth. In the study, 28 trained males with an average of 5 years lifting experience performed a squat, leg press, leg extensions, and seated leg curls twice a week for 8 weeks. One group trained using drop sets, the other used rest pause, and the third followed a traditional training approach. And this is what they found out. After 8 weeks, lateral thigh muscle thickness increased similarly across all groups, with no significant differences when summing up all regional measurements. So in other words, there were no differences. When using metabolite techniques, the number of reps you perform may differ from those in traditional straight sets. For instance, in the case of myo reps, you start with one standard set of around 10 to 15 reps taking close to failure. That's known as the activation set. After this, you rest for about 15 to 30 seconds before performing another myo rep set with the same load again taking close to failure. You repeat these myo rep sets until you reach the target number of total repetitions or a predetermined number of sets. Since the rest periods are short and acute fatigue is high, you'll likely only be able to perform around 3 to 6 reps per myo rep set. As a result, the rep range you're targeting will not be the same as if you were performing a traditional straight sets. If you enjoyed our content, please show your support by letting us know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel.